Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role-playing game podcast, where we talk about game design and industry news. And Teos is holding up a map of what we are going to be talking about in our main segment, which is the Tomb of Horrors First Edition D&D Adventure. But first, Teos, are you feeling horrified?
No, I'm feeling great. I feel like Zen-like because I went out to Silver Falls, a wonderful park in Oregon, and there are like 10 waterfalls, but there are a lot of little ones too, and walked the whole thing and got great exercise. My calves feel great. Let's go with that. Positive spin. Okay. And it was super fun. It was great. It was a really nice Mother's Day. Shout out to all the mothers that are doing RPG work on top of parenting. And it was just a great weekend, really fun. I did not do any design on Sunday, and at night, we get into bed to read, and I'm like, what if I worked on? That's when you know you like doing it, because I was like, maybe I should do a little. But I didn't. Yeah,
I did work a little on Mother's Day, although we went to a bookstore and had a nice little shopping trip there, and we watched a movie, The Sheep Detectives. And
I know nothing of this.
Let me tell you, I thought, it's a cute little movie where the sheep solve a murder and the sheep talk, and that bad boy hits hard.
Okay.
All right. There was crying, not me, but there were tears. Yeah, well, hardly. There were tears involved with watching. Good movie though. Suggest it for people, for anybody. Give it a shot.
I love it.
But you, I know, have some exciting news because you did in fact do some work this weekend.
That is true. We got to send on Monday to all of our Patreon supporters at the Master of Realms and Master of Multiverse levels. Those supporters received 2 magic items that were inspired by my Tomb of Annihilation home campaign. Some folks will know that back then I sort of experimented with this idea of, it's terrible when you get a +1 weapon and then you get a +2 weapon, and you probably made some story about the +1, and now you're like, I just got to throw it away. And so the idea that I was really working on during the campaign was what I called signature items, where these items evolve with you. And I made a supplement about it. And so using those concepts, I had a variety of weapons that were very themed to Tomb of Annihilation and the various concepts that are going in there, like, pirates and jungles and wild beasts. And so you get the beast handlers, I forget exactly what I ended up calling it. Harness. Thank you. And the Pirate Queen's halberd. And both of those are very, very thematic magic items and really grow with you as you level. And you took an awesome editing pass on it because you've been schooled in 5e 2024 magic item design. And that was very good to see. I always love it when I see red ink come back to me because it means I have things to learn, which is exciting. And so that was great. Yeah. So I think they're really good. I think they're really fun. And we have 2 of them. If folks are like, wow, these are amazing, I want more, I can go to that well because I've got all my campaign notes and we had really cool evolving magic items for everybody. And the other thing is next week, I'm going to do up draw steel versions of these 2 so that folks can kind of compare to that.
Awesome. Yeah, they were really great items. There were a couple times where I was like, oh, yeah, totally. I could see this in Tomb of Annihilation. Laughed out loud a couple of times at some of the stuff. Really super fun, evocative, and evolving magic items. So check those out if you are in the Master of Realms or Masters of the Multiverse supporter group there. Mm-hmm. And we do have a clarification as well from what we covered a couple weeks ago on the Hasbro patent for AI rules. What is that clarification there, Mr.
Abadia? So AE Fact on Mastodon shared that what we saw, which was this sort of looked like a public filing kind of thing, that is the publishing of the fact that an application was made. But that filing has actually not yet been reviewed or approved because a lot of folks were sort of like, man, really? No one else can do this? It seems very normal. So what it means is the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office hasn't even yet assigned a group or examiner to review the pending application. It could be 10 months before it makes any real progress, and they may not even approve it. So it is just that idea. The real news is that was filed, right? So back in October, this was a thing they wanted to file, but where it goes, we'll have to stay tuned and see.
Awesome. And also awesome are our listeners. Some of them come to us via social media. Some of us are on our Patreon Discord. Some of you out there watch or listen on YouTube. Sometimes you email us at masteringdnd@gmail.com, or even sometimes you ask at conventions or in real life. And so we're going to take a couple more questions today. We've got a good backlog going, so we're going to rip through some of these, starting with Aaron, who comes to us via Bluesky. He says, Shawn, do you wish you'd gotten to add more to the Eberron organized play adventure, The Nightland? If it hadn't been for AL, what would be different given your druthers? If you're converting AL adventures for non-AL play, what are the pitfalls to avoid? With the obligatory know your players out of the way. So here, are you ready for this answer? Are you ready for this answer?
Yeah.
The only answer out there is know your players. That's not just an obligatory, let's get that out of the way. That is the answer. That's the answer to all of this.
Yeah.
So we can't just get it out of the way. Form follows function is more important, I would say, to adventure design than even to architecture, where that little quote comes from. So for reference, The Nightland was the first adventure in the Eberron Oracle of War campaign that WotC did for 4th edition Adventurers League. Will Doyle was the writing manager. I was the resource manager, but Will specifically asked me to write the first adventure and gave me mandates and goals. And it was those mandates and goals that gave it its form and then its content. So if it hadn't been for AL, how would it have been different? I don't know. If it's not for AL, who is it for? Right? If it's for my home group, I'm going to make it sillier. I'm going to make it a little more deadly. I'm going to make it a little more combat focused with a little less lore involved. If it's for a longer hardcover campaign that goes to levels 1 to 15, then I'm going to spend more time establishing the Town of Salvation, which we didn't do in that adventure, but we did later. And I'm going to have several encounters before the characters even enter the Mournland for the first time. So a mini adventure that I also wrote, but was somehow credited to Chris Lindsay, went into the gold edition of the Beadle and Grimm's Eberron product. And that was supposed to introduce people to the introduction to this new campaign. And so for that, I had the characters traveling from, I forgot what city it was, but they were traveling there to Salvation, and they run into some things that sort of foretell or foreshadow what's going to happen when they get to Salvation. So there is another thing where I did it, but it was all about who is going to be reading this, who is going to be playing this, and what's its function, because that function will by necessity tell me what its form needs to be.
One other thing I'll add about AL Adventures, obviously had nothing to do with the Eberron campaign, but just in general with AL, is that you're trying to create something that will please the majority, maybe even the vast majority sometimes, of players that are doing this organized play program. And so when you're thinking of the arc of what this adventure is going to cover, right, the plot of it, as we talked about last episode, you're trying to think about things that will provide sufficient story understanding, right, so that people know what's going on. You want some callbacks, or in this case, because it's the first adventure, call forwards to what will come. And so you're trying to put all these pieces in there that in a home campaign, you don't need to be that careful about it, because you can always wrap around and reinforce and do more, and you can play with it, right? It's a more flexible thing that you, as you said, tailor to your group. But when you're doing it for everybody, these boxes must be ticked, kind of thing. And so you're trying to be very deliberate and careful with that structure. But when you are in a home campaign, you might do things like say, this intro scene, I'm just going to start with them shopping and just let the kind of table dynamics work for a while. Give it that breathing room, sitting out that glass of red wine to let it breathe. You're doing that with campaigns a lot more. And so scenes, you often expand a bit because you don't have the time pressure, because you don't just have to check that box. You can do more with it. So a lot of times it's really about just opening them up those scenes and letting them breathe a bit more with your group. Every now and then you might skip a scene, but I find less that I will skip a scene when I'm doing AL or any organized play for my home, but rather that I'll add more or just prolong that experience, right? What would be a 4-hour adventure will be 8 hours, both because I add and because I just let play happen longer.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm sorry that you told me not to give the answer I gave, but that is the only answer I know. Regardless of whether it's for publication or for my home group or for a more casual audience or whatever. Yeah. So the next question comes to us from Shawn Hillman 1016 via YouTube. Shawn discusses how early 5e had a slower release pace in this question. And then he asks, as designers and freelancers who have seen something behind the scenes, does a more frenetic, crowded release schedule affect you? Or are there projects spread among different teams so that a faster pace doesn't affect your work? The answer here is yes.
Yeah. I'll say, I mean, from my end, during the D&D Next period and into early 5e was really the period where I worked the most for Wizards that I ever have. Like just lots of projects on all kinds of scale and scope things, from small to big, and a little bit end of 4e too, with Dragon magazines and Dungeon magazines and things like that. I was doing a lot of official work. One real benefit is that my brain's really attuned to it, right? The more that you keep designing for that one edition or for that one company, for that one game, you really get into a rhythm, right? You know exactly what you're doing. Your skills are very sharp, versus if every now and then you're called in to do a project, you kind of have to go back to it and go like, okay, wait, what is the structure? What is the wording? What is the, and you break out, all of your guide documents that you've written up and stuff. So in some ways it's better. And I will say that like, even when I was getting a lot of different projects and turning down work and things like that, I never felt like it was too frenetic in terms of the amount of work I was getting. It was that I have a real life, right? Outside of this lovely work. And so I had my day job and I had my family stuff. That was the frenetic part of it. But having a lot of work was not a problem to me. We're talking here a little bit about that release pace of, so if we think of like, well, is it great to have Tomb of Annihilation be the whole year's excitement, and then maybe like a Ghost of Saltmarsh type thing, and maybe a partner thing like an Ack Inc. If that was your year, does that impact you as a freelancer? No, because I think one of the things that having a big flagship release or even a seasonal release, as we're going to start having, is a nice thematic piece, and then there are small bits that are around it. But having that thematic thing really helps and actually excites you as a designer, speaking for myself, so that you're excited to do little things, right? Like, Tomb of Annihilation, we did the D&D Open. That was a lot of fun to do something. And we were starting to understand that theme that later led to, AL projects and other things that were all themed around the same adventure.
Mm-hmm. I have to come at this question from different angles because as a designer, you do what you're contracted to do. And you get to say, well, I can do 5,000 words in 2 weeks. I can do 10,000 words in 2 weeks. I can do 1,000 words, but it's going to take me a month, right? You get to say, this is my bandwidth. And then you can either take the work, refuse the work, or they say, well, we need more, so we're going to go with somebody else. As you move up the project ladder to a lead designer, then it becomes a little more frenetic, because if you need 100,000 words done, you can hire one person to do 100,000 words, or you can hire 5 people to do 20,000 words, or you can hire 10 people to do 10,000 words. And you might think, well, if I hire 10 people to do 10,000 words and they each can do it in 2 weeks, I'm getting the project done in 2 weeks. And the answer is, no, you're not. Because what happens is you still have to read 100,000 words as the lead designer, and no matter when it comes in. Right. And I'm not even talking about developing. I'm not even talking about editing. I'm not talking about art. I'm not talking about layout. I'm just talking about this one aspect of it. So the bigger the project is, the more frenetic it is going to be just by definition.
Yeah.
Because there's more content that needs to be sifted through, fixed, changed, redesigned, turned into what it started as, turned into something that it didn't start as, right? There's all of this process going on. I know that Joe Rosso, who is a project manager for Ghostfire Gaming, talks about this at conventions and stuff, where he was just a freelancer and then he was leading a project, and he just made this linear assumption of, if I can do this, then other people can do this. And if I can do this in this amount of time, then I can do this in this amount of time. And it's not linear, it's exponential.
Yeah.
And so, yes, just by definition, a faster release schedule will be more frenetic, because it's more, no matter how many people you hire to do it, unless they're in completely different silos. There's
for the company
a pace
for sure.
Right.
I was reading this as for the freelancer, but yes, when you get to the company level, there you're not. It's not like you just apply more resources and it's better. And there is more maintenance to everything, right? Everything that you're doing is touching on the other things you're doing, even if it's just from the point of like the demographics you're trying to please or the types of experiences. You have to watch all those overlaps and interactions. Everything it becomes multiplicative in terms of its busyness and its amount of time that it needs. Everything becomes more difficult for sure. And that's true of the bigger that these small things are. If you have very lots of little things that are more at arm's length, like, you're directing some organized play thing and someone else is going to make the decisions, that's a little different. But if you're going to oversee those, then everything just starts adding. And you can look at Wizards and just see like, wow, they've got to be doing drops. They've got to be doing, as we'll talk about in the news, they've got to be doing, the books. They've got to be doing Dungeon Master's actual play. They've got, as you add all these little things, and they can feel little, but that does really complicate it at the company level. An individual freelancer might go, yay, this is great. I'll just do one more thing, not a big deal.
Yeah. I can honestly say that since I joined Wizards, as a full-time contractor, yes, it's been frenetic in a great way for me. Because I haven't had to do the development. I haven't had to do the project management. It's just been take this bit, complete it, turn it in, turn my attention to the next bit. So it really allows me to touch a lot of different projects and a lot of different ways, of adventure design, game design, all sorts of content being created that I love to move back and forth between. Yeah. So frenetic in the best possible way.
Yeah. And for me at the Crack the Sun level, I'm really seeing how that complexity hits when every individual author's schedule and complications come in, and you have to weigh all those, and you're trying to deal with playtesters, but then another release comes along, and scheduling all these things. No schedule survives contact with the actual writing, and it all becomes complicated. And then somebody internally will have an idea of, what we should actually do for that one part is. And all these discussions are complicated.
Yes. And that complicated answer will lead us into our news and commentary section, starting with D&D Beyond announcing the D&D Beyond drops. They announced that this new subscriber benefit will be for hero and master tier subscribers. These will be periodic drops of D&D material in a digital only format right now on D&D Beyond. So this is a special type of content. As a DM, right now you will not be able to share it like you can if you purchase a book. And if you unsubscribe, you will lose access to that. So this is a live service content only. Teos, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, the nice counter to that is that if you in the past, when you say like got a subscriber perk, which is the previous form of rewards and something that's going away at the end of June, a subscriber perk was, hey, you're a subscriber this month, you get this special dice set, and you get this, background for character sheets and stuff like that. if you canceled your subscription and the next month gave something like that, you didn't get that. And when you resubscribed the month after that, you did not get the thing you missed. You just missed it. Now you will get whatever is in drops while you're subscribed. Things that you're subscribed to won't go away. So for example, Shawn, there's a new feat there. I add it to my character. It's there. Even if I am not subscribed, it'll be there. But if I were to go in and remove that feat that was drops based and play a level without it, and then I go back and want to add it, well, if I don't have access to it, I can't re-add it, right? So you don't lose things, but you no longer have access to mess with them, play with them, and so on. But it also means you can't share them. So that means that if I'm running a game, and I can certainly use the bandit ambush in my VTT, but I cannot give you the feat that came out with that drop.
Yeah. So we get the quote: D&D Beyond Drops content will be developed by a combination of our staff, freelancers, and newer voices in the TTRPG community.
I thought that was really interesting, Shawn, because there have been places, and on the AMA on Reddit, they kind of added some clarification to this. There have been times when, say, Dungeon Magazine, Dragon Magazine, from the very beginning of the history of the paper publications, but even at the DDI level for 4th edition, those magazines were entryways for designers to sort of cut their teeth and get some credit and learn to work with Wizards or TSR way back then. But also, what a lot of folks don't remember is how often a designer that now is well known sent submission after submission after submission to those companies that the company turned down. And a lot of times what the process was way back in the paper days was you submit the article and they go, yeah, thanks, no. Right? So you might make 6 or 8 pitches and then one might be chosen if you were good enough. And so this question of newer voices, I think, is always interesting because we've seen things where, D&D would say, we're going to pull people from the Dungeon Masters Guild. And then, Chris Perkins says, well, I picked people that on Twitter were recommended to me. And then you find out, well, it turns out some of those people just didn't really particularly know how to write stuff in the context of what Wizards of the Coast needs. So I think there's a balance here to be struck with the kind of person that in today's world is a great pick as quote unquote newer voice, right? I might say Taylor Navarro is a newer voice, but clearly so good and has done enough things with D&D already to where Wizards can say that person, Taylor's ready to be staff, right? And so there is this, you can be new, but have done things that really qualify you for something like this. And I think that's what we're looking for, because in today's world, you don't want people making pitches. And so, right.
And it's a completely different world than it was in even 2000.
Yeah.
Not to mention 1970, whatever. and it's easier to find newer voices because there are voices everywhere shouting at you from YouTube, from blogs, from TikTok, from Discord, from wherever, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
And so a new voice to you and I may be the most established voice in this other community of 1 million people. And it's somebody who has never, ever been heard of by anyone could be in the right place at the right time and get their work there.
Yeah.
So it's all about process. It's all about resources. It's all about, do you have the time to scour whatever it is, whether it's a slush pile from an old timey magazine or the DM's Guild's new release section or whatever? Yeah. Do you have the time? Do you have the energy? Do you have the resources? Do you have the stone cold cash in order to pay people to find those new voices that are skilled enough to do the work that needs to be done? So it's an interesting question, and I'm sure one that we'll hear a lot more about later. Let's talk about what subscribers get through D&D Drops.
Yeah, so you get a weekly drop-in encounter for the Maps VTT. The first one is called Bandit Ambush, and this was funny. So I did a video on what drops provides. So we don't have to cover everything. There's some overlap there, and if folks are interested, go check out my video on the AlphaStream channel. I actually show you exactly what this Bandit Ambush is and what the screens look like and all of that. It's funny because one of the things that I can share is I've had conversations with D&D staff. We can't quote anybody from those of us who were there, but I was part of a group of sort of YouTube type creators that was invited to join and see things and talk to staff. And when they described this thing, I said, like a bandit ambush? I had no idea. The very first one is literally a bandit ambush. You get 2 versions every week. And I don't know if this will always be the same encounter at 2 levels, or will it sometimes be 2 different ones? I didn't see any clarification to that in the text. But the first one was Bandit Ambush at level 3 and at level 9. And then we have monthly drops, including new DM options. So this can be maps, reveals, which are the kind of handout-like things you show in the maps VTT, monsters, and more. New player options, spells, feats, magic items, probably subclasses and things like that. New drops come out on Thursdays for the weekly drop and the first Thursday of the month for the other monthly drops. And so we already are told, Shawn, next week what we're going to see, or next month.
Next month. Yes, we're going to see 4 monsters, 5 maps, 25 reveals, and 6 player options.
Mm-hmm. That's a lot.
And we got a bunch of initial options with the start of the program. We got new character options like the Pact Seeker background, which grants a planar pact feat. So you can have a pact without being a warlock, as well as 5 planar pact feats. 150 new cosmetic perks, such as the April Fool dice or the Weapon Mastery dice sets, 4 treasure trove and 4 legendary magic item character sheet frames, 4 untamed wilderness character sheet backdrops, and many more. All the previous subscriber perks are now available through drops. Yep. What about VTT components?
Wow, 250 plus VTT components, but most of that is the fact that we have a bundle of 125 maps from 4E. It was said that, Greg Bilson had said, hey, wait a minute, we have all those maps from 4th edition. And so those are all coming in are in now as part of the drops package of maps available for the VTT. There are 250 reveals from across 5e products. Again, these are handouty types illustrations. 10 nature-themed stickers. Those are things you can add as an overlay on top of the map itself in the Maps VTT. Traps or treasure, 10 sticker packs there. And all of this is really interesting, Shawn. I assume this is a program that they will tweak over time in a number of things. One of them was just looking at the weekly encounter drops. This is something that's, DM focused and it's Maps VTT focused. Mm-hmm. So it has a bit of an audience to it, right? Because I am not running in Maps. You and I have played a few games in it. I've done some things with Maps, but overall I play face to face, right? So this is not a thing that I can particularly use unless I can sort of extract the things out. And so what I did in my video was sort of take a look at what can we extract from it. There's a Bandit Ambush level 3, a level 9, and there's a sort of process. You go through the maps menu, you go, I want the 9th level, and you can decide whether you want just the map or do you want what's called quick play. And this adds what is said to be a high difficulty encounter for 5 PCs. For the 9th level version, you get 8 creature tokens. And I thought it was kind of interesting. Like there are 8 different creatures here, which on one hand you could say is, ooh, I got bang for my buck, but 8 stat blocks to run is no joke, and the CRs vary widely. You can see a full breakdown of that. I even break out my adventure spreadsheet to look at the design of the encounter and the DPR and things like that, the variants and how they're spread across the map. So I think there are ways that this can become more useful for VTT DMs to be easy to run. I also think here there's a whole big topic about who drops is for. And when I think about what this encounter is doing, even a really good established DM, 8 stat blocks is a lot. But if you're a brand new DM, 8 stat blocks is a way to, it's a possible recipe towards not running a fun encounter. And I think the map itself makes it a little hard. And so I would love to see a more things that really please that demographic of people that are new, because bringing in new DMs has been one of the keys to 5e's success, as far as I can tell. When you talk about what's successful for every Stranger Things or Critical Role, it's also that there were a lot of ways for new DMs to get going. And we saw that statistically, tons and tons of new players, right? Over half of all people who are involved with 5th edition began with 5th edition. And that's really huge, right? So bringing in people that are new and pleasing them, having something for them, to me is very important. The level 3 fight is more manageable. 4 different stat blocks. 1 monster appears twice. 5 monsters, a little easier. And that is a little bit, I think, advantageous to running what you're trying to do. Thoughts, Shawn?
Not really. It's a thing. It's a thing that's being offered. And for some people, this is amazing. For some people, this is just an incredible amount of content that is most useful for them. The value that they're getting through the subscription that they already had is out of this world. Right. For some people, it's, I don't care. I don't run online. I don't care about maps. So what? What do I get? Yeah. And that's the question that is, I'm trying to remain calm about the so what do I get question. And I will leave it at that.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's where the company will tweak it. And even in the session that I was a part of that I can talk about, there was this clear interest to see where this goes within the company, right? Trying to figure out where it goes. One of the things they're doing is having a survey on the last Thursday of every month for subscribers to provide feedback, right? So already a clear indication that they want to listen. And in the AMA, we saw that there was a lot there about them listening. So one of the things Brian Perry responded to is they hear the feedback where people are saying that, why does sharing work differently? Why as a DM can't I share, this new feat with my players? This is why I subscribe, is so I can give the stuff to the players. And I think that's a tough question, because I can easily say, hey, why would D&D want to build a model where only one person pays for stuff? Like, that's a really weird model, right? But there are services that do things like this, Spotify Family, for all that Spotify's a horrible company, things like that, where you can share things. Yeah, sure. When you get cable TV, it's for everybody in the family, things like that. But I think this is a little different, right? It's not a household, it's so on. And so I can absolutely see D&D trying to look for a way that the players are invested in it monetarily and are part of the hobby and the industry and supporting the company that's making all of these things. I don't have a problem with that at all. I think it's an issue of fine tuning it so the value is there. And in my thing, when I think about the business case, as you said, Shawn, the value of D&D Beyond is already enormous. Like, I've never talked to somebody who said, I'm not getting enough for that, right? But of course, people will try to save a buck and say, well, if my DM will share everything with me, then I don't need to do anything. But I don't know that that's healthy for the industry necessarily. So I think there'll be a lot of back and forth here over time and figuring out the impacts on the staff, right? If they're making more, do they end up deciding that they want to charge more? And I subscription price increase would be something that I would be sensitive about. I did ask staff, are you planning to increase the price of subscriptions? And I was told there was no immediate plan, but, we can't speak to the future. We can't make promises, And I don't know if that was a we don't know or we can't tell you, but it is certainly a worry for me when we think about what plans often do. We offer you some things up front and it all sounds really great, and then we charge you more. And I think that would be, again, because as I see the success for Wizards and Hasbro has been bringing in lots of people, a low entry point really does that for you. And the last thing, Shawn, is just this digital versus paper divide, right? This is an ambush encounter that really is meant to be on the maps VTT. It's not meant to be run on paper. Nothing in what's being offered makes it easy to implement this, right? There's no PDF version. There is no description of what's happening or breaking out of stuff. No page numbers of where I can look it up in the book. It's very digital focused. And so I think that's a thing for the team to think about carefully over time. They are telling us that books remain the heart of D&D. And that the goal is to sort of fill in the gap in what DMs need. But the more that it's very digital, we will likely see some pushback and maybe some barriers to how new players get started and so on. So I'll stop there, but I think those are all really interesting questions that I look forward to seeing how it all develops.
Mm-hmm. And then on the back of that, we get Chris Cox talking about D&D's digital future. Games Radar has this interview with Hasbro CEO Chris Cox, where Cox discusses future Magic the Gathering and D&D plans with a bunch of interesting quotes. And we'll start with this first one, and we'll get Teos's reactions here. One of the core pillars of playing to win is this concept that we call aging up. Today, the dominant audience for play and collection is really people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, or even old timers like myself in their 50s. We're the people who are going out there and buying a lot of things, engaging in a lot of things, wanting to go back and experience brands that we grew up with in a whole new, more mature way. And that's directly down the fairway of brands like Magic and, of course, D&D.
That's I don't like anything about this, right? Because it is the K-shaped economy. It is the idea that and it can work just fine, right? Beetle and Grimm's, this is exactly what they do. They sell to the person who now has a lot of money, which is what they mean by more mature way, right? You have lots of cash. Here's this beautiful version of this. Spend the money, right? Spend the $1,000 on the dungeon crawler, Carl, full all in. Yeah. Somewhere in there are words. It's that idea that it's the whale, right? And that is fine for some things because you're offering a special experience. But when you come back towards the core of what a brand is, it can be really worrisome if the core of the brand is built on the backs of only the people who have a ton of money. And I think the D&D has always been very accessible, very cheap. But the reality is what we find is high value, right? So for all that you could just use your pencil and paper and just dream up ideas or buy that one book, the reality is you as a person found that saving those dollars from your hard-earned job and using them to buy another book was usually great payoff, right? And that's a very different thing than saying, actually, this is for people who can give me $300 for the gold foil tin version, right? And so, yeah. So I'll stop there. And what's the next quote, Shawn?
Books will always be an important part of D&D. It will always be kind of like a special totem that you can collect. I have a big bookshelf of D&D books myself, but we see what's happening. Almost everyone who plays D&D uses D&D Beyond, like a super high percentage use it. Again, those are the words of Chris Cox.
Yeah. So I had all weekend to calm down after reading this because first I'll just say everything I've ever seen statistically shows that it is not a super high percentage using D&D Beyond. It might be of certain demographics for sure, but that more than half are not using it. And that's with like online surveys that are really weighted towards the hardcore people who are using D&D Beyond. Even if we look at, say, Hasbro revenue back about a year ago, the statistic was 60% versus 40% was digital, but that was counting a lot of different things monetarily. It's not a direct use thing. But even then, it's 60-40 paper digital. So we're really far away from where books are a special totem that you can collect. No, they are the lifeblood of the experiences I'm having at tables. All kinds of tables are still using paper very heavily. And I think there's a real danger if the company decides to move towards solely digital or primarily digital, it could be really problematic. We saw during the pandemic, there was this thought process of, wow, everybody's playing online. This is clearly where everything is going. And what happened after the pandemic? People returned to playing on, in person. And all the stats skewed back towards in-person play. Why? It's what people like, right? And so I think there's just a real danger with what's being said here. Now, CEOs say things for lots of reasons, and they often live in a world of when I'm speaking to the investors or things like that, right? Then so you shape your mind that way, and it can be that that's what came out here in this interview.
Another quote, a very high percentage use Foundry VTT or Roll20. And so it just makes sense that you should start to migrate your thinking about the way you play of a more live service where you don't have to wait 18 months for us to build a book. We can start to release components or aspects of that book over time, and you don't have to buy everything all at once. You can buy chapters or segments of it over time. That makes a ton of sense to me. That said, we will still have big moments. We will still have like, hey, ta-da, here's a huge campaign. You can expect there'll be more around that, both from us or from all the creators in the world that can leverage a platform like D&D Beyond to share their content as well.
It's tough to know whether this is Chris Cox going a bit off script or if this is really like a directive. It probably isn't, is my guess, directive, but it reminds me of things executives said during the 4th edition era, right? Everybody was sure that MMOs were going to turn tabletop RPGs into video games. Collectible card games. If you lived through that CCG craze where everybody thought that their RPG company needed to become a collectible card game company, right? Everybody was sure of what the world would look like. What happened during 5th edition? What was the success? It was paper book sales. And everybody I talked to was like, I'm so happy. This is really like through the lens of my life, but I was talking to parents who were saying, I'm so happy my kids are off their devices and playing face to face. And so there's a give and take here of, obviously there are tons of people who are going to play online and with digital tools, but also there is a clear entry path into it. And all of those people who come in playing with paper will probably mature and play in a lot of different ways if you allow for that. So I hope that this is just one of those kind of interviews and that we will see a company that keeps doing what it's saying, which is recognizing paper as the lifeblood of the company.
Mm-hmm. And again, that interview was at gamesradar.com. We talked before about the Magic the Gathering Arena team filing to create a union, and they gave Wizards of the Coast a deadline by which to voluntarily recognize the union. That deadline has come and gone. So on their blog, the union representatives write that the deadline passed with no response. The blog also says that more than 30,000 people have signed the petition calling on Wizards to recognize the union.
Yeah. I'm always a little torn on unions, having worked with a lot of them, but what would make me super happy is if Hasbro and Wizards were to say, hey, we hear you. Let's fix these 3 things right now. How about that? And that's what I would love to see from any company out there. I don't know enough about these individual things that they're requesting. I don't nothing to do with the arena team. I've never talked to any member of the Magic the Gathering arena team, but that would be the thing that for me, from an outside perspective, I would love to see. And we'll keep watching the story and see where it goes.
All right. We have news on the Dungeon Masters actual play along packs. This week, the encounter is called Waxworks, a prison of sorrow, a nightmare prison of living wax where captives are bound into sculpted scenes of their deepest torments, holds key information that the characters need. So this encounter is for level 6 characters. We get a cavern map, some colored with some red pools. All of the floors, walls, and stairs are sculpted out of wax. Fire damage can melt and make difficult terrain for 10 minutes until it cools.
That's awesome.
Molten wax, the red pools all cause fire damage. Alcoves and rooms have prisoners sculpted in wax, but actually the prisoners are still alive inside these wax sculptures.
I love everything about this, Shawn. This is so evocative, so cool an idea. You seek this wounded NPC. You might hurt them trying to get them out of the wax. There's a kind of quick rule for how that works. Once you free them, the alarm is sounded, and the statues all become Waxwork, a type of monster, a new monster, in fact, CR3, and they come after you. So they can shapeshift into a humanoid. They can melt if attacked with fire, which is really cool. They have a sculpting knife multi-attack. They can also lob a wax lob to slow a single target. So if you're trying to run away, that could be a big factor. Really imaginative, creative encounter, and I liked a lot about this. And this was the one that really wowed me of the ones that we've seen so far. Again, you have to pre-order the new Ravenloft book to have this early access. I'm not entirely sure to what extent you would see this in the published work. Do you know, Shawn?
The published book,
would the final book have? I know that it has these monsters in it, but I don't know if it has. I don't think it has this encounter, right?
No, from my understanding of everything, these are specific.
Yeah.
These encounters are specific to themselves,
Yeah.
although they might have components that are in the book.
Yeah, inspired by the DMAP. That was my understanding as well. But it's pretty neat. I thought that was a really cool encounter idea. Very fun.
Awesome. Friend of the show, Tim Harford, writer, economist, podcaster, has written a fantastic post covering Lee Gold and her incredible run with the Alarums and Excursions zine. Tim points out how this Alarums and Excursions zine lasted longer than Dragon Magazine, than White Dwarf Magazine, and in it, Lee recounts the barriers she faced, including that terrible phone call with Gary Gygax, where he just couldn't seem to get over the fact that she was a woman creating this great content. Tim discusses how hard it is to persevere, as well as the benefits of formats such as zines compared to the modern equivalents. So you can see that. It's very recommended by both Teos and I at timharford.com.
Yeah, great stuff.
And in our Creator Corner this week, we're going to talk about Jeff Stevens' games and Weapons of Lore for Draw Steel. Jeff has this popular Weapons of Lore series that has been available for other games, and now it is available for Draw Steel, MCDM's tabletop role-playing game. This includes leveled treasure, like leveled weapons, implements, and cursed weapons that increase in power as you gain levels. And so this has been converted to Draw Steel by expert Spencer Hibnick. The layout was done by Alan Tucker, and the weapons have been designed by a number of folks, including some of the great designers who are in the Mastering Dungeons Discord. So congratulations, everybody there. And if we're talking about big crowdfunders, we have to give a shout out to Neon Odyssey, currently sitting at an incredible $9.1 million with still 23 days left to go, which provides the space opera version of 5e. And if that's not enough, we have Dungeon Crawler Carl RPG and card game, which is sitting at 10.3 with a day or so left by the time you hear this.
Wow.
So, Teos, what can we learn from crowdfunders like this?
I think that's the question everyone's asking. And I've really heard a variety of people saying a variety of things to that very answer. One thing it does is it humbles us all, right? Those of us who know that we'd be lucky to get a 2K Kickstarter, we have to face them. It's like facing your own mortality. You just realize, well, there's nothing I'm doing that leads to a 9.1 million Kickstarter. And I couldn't even begin to know how to get there. And so I think a lot of the industry just has to self-reflect on that. And that's really one thing if you're an individual like me. It's another thing if you are a small company that maybe has like 200K Kickstarters and you're like, I don't even know, how do I get the 9 million, right? Or 1 million. It's just another level. And you can say things like, is it the importance of short form video? And nobody knows, right? And I hate short form video, so I'm definitely not doing that. So cross that off the list. It's just fascinating to watch. Obviously, you've got things like when you talk about Dungeon Crawler Carl, people just get really happy. That's true of my own gaming group of on our Discord. Like there are people who just love this property and they're willing to throw $500 to $1,000 at it, and that's fantastic, right? It's exactly what we want to exist there. Things that make people really happy. Neon Odyssey. If you had asked me, what are the chances that you could lean in, first of all, space RPG would be big, a space version of 5e. Because you and I know Rich Lescaflair and his incredibly amazing Esper Genesis. It's just out of my reach, or I'd hold it up. It's such a great game. You and I have played it at cons. It's a blast. It has, but only a size. It's sad how the audience has not discovered that it exists, right? And you're going to tell me we're going to make a space version of 5e again, and we're going to make it neon synth space opera, lean into those aspects. I would say, yeah, good luck selling that. And here we are. And who knows how big this will end up when it gets towards the end, more than 10 million for sure. That is incredible. And all I really want is for more of this success to be attainable to more. rather than concentrated, but I am also very happy to see this. I'm very happy to see this many people try out a 5th edition space opera. Hopefully it lifts up Esper Genesis and games like that. What do you think, Shawn?
Yeah, same, right? If everybody could do this, we would all be running $10 million Kickstarters. And we can posit on the many reasons why this one game that's not even made yet can get this, whereas in another game that is sound and fun doesn't. And you can either celebrate or despair, or do both, because we live in a complex world. So congratulations to Renegade, congratulations to Legends of Evantris for that continuing success, and we'll see how the games come out when they're done. And that was our news and commentary section here this week on Mastering Dungeons. Hang in there for our main segment where we discuss Tomb of Horrors.